walk you through laying down some sound design and music editing for a scene in Reckoning. So I'm not going to do this bit by bit. I'm going to do it quickly, but just show you in a very basic sense what's involved in creating the sound landscape for a scene. So let's take a look. So I've brought in some footage from scene 7 of Reckoning, where Rose is feeding some chickens, feeding her goat. This is the part in the story where we're using empathy intentions still to help the audience get on board with her, right? And so my version of saving the cat or petting the dog or whatever you want to call it is with animals at her farm. So here's the stuff. I've got my video and audio, and this assumes we've already done any linking of camera and audio files. I've got some Foley, library sounds, stuff like that. In fact, let me change to thumbnail view here so I can see. Now, if I hadn't cut this together at all yet, the first thing you're going to do as the editor, even when it's your own project, is watch your footage. And depending on how you're wired, this can be a big discipline because you just kind of want to start cutting, even when it's stuff that you shot. But the discipline of watching all of your stuff is paramount because you need to know what you have in order to then take that creatively and put it together the right way. Assuming we've done that, let's start putting this together. So I know I've got an extreme wide of her coming to her farm, and this is the first time we've seen her cabin. So this is what I want to open with. It looks like I already have an in and out here left over from when I cut it before, so that's cool. So I'm going to drag that down. And now I want to cut to her so we can see her a little closer. And let's just say I'm going to clear right about, so she's just clearing the trees. Now you see I drug it down, I kind of moved it over. Obviously, if I killed that, I could just go to the edit point here and do V and be a little more efficient. Now, something we're to go over more in the editing training, but I want to mention it here first, is that sometimes as the storyteller, you have to make the tough call of losing footage that you shot. Originally for this scene, I not only shot this, but I shot her walking close to the cabin, setting her rod down, taking the creel off, and I just realized later when I was trying to cut all that together, that's just boring. Who cares? We get it. We just need to see her approaching the cabin with her fishing rod because we've just seen her fishing. And that's all the audience needs to see. It doesn't matter how good my other footage looks. It wasn't serving the purpose of this scene, so I lost it. All right, next. So I chose a hard cut from this to her by the chickens. So let's back this up. So I'm going to start on the chickens, and then I'm going to cut to her leaving. So again, we're not showing her feeding them or anything. We're keeping this on target because I'm going to show her feeding the goat in just a second, so I don't need redundant feedings. And also, this camera audio on these is irrelevant, so I have link selection deselected, so I'm just going to kill those. All right. So we've got a lot going on with no audio here because I didn't use my mic and field recorder on this shot. It's MOS. So let's just take a look at this. So she's approaching. There we go. That's good. Got the chickens. And then she's walking towards the barn. So now's when I want to move out. Let's find the barn shot. We've seen this already. In fact, I still have an in and out. There we go. So let's just add that in. Again, don't need that audio. There we go. Good, okay. Now I could let her go all the way up to the handle, but again, that may not be what I want to do. Let's take a look at what else we have. We have inside the barn of her walking up. That's what I want to do. So let's back this up a bit. I'm going to kill it right about there. And then add this. And obviously I keep deleting this audio, but if I just clicked over here on A1, it wouldn't add the audio. So that's probably what I should have done. Okay, there we go. So we see this, have her opening it up. And again, I could have her walk in further, but it's keeping it brief. It's keeping it interesting. So I'm just going to show this, and then I'm going to show the goat. I want the goat's reaction to someone entering. So where's our goat? Here we go. So yeah, him looking over is good for this. And if I keep going though, I've got more than one take of him looking up. So this one's actually a little better. It's framed up better, and I've got the chicken going on over here, so that's cool. So I've got my in and out. Go ahead and add that. There we go. And then I've got a take here of her. And again, I'm rushing this now. I watched these in real time and decided before, so just don't want to bore you with all that. Let's go ahead and put that in. So I think this is working well. Now, just a side note, I put this together quickly because I had already edited this scene for Reckoning. Now I just want to emphasize that you want to experiment. You don't want to just cut it together and think, hey, that's good. You want to experiment with the length of your cuts. You want to experiment with the order of your cuts, etc. Like I mentioned at the beginning, at this point right here when I had her walking in before the chickens, I had all this other stuff of her walking over to the cabin, setting her gear down, etc. And I realized it's not needed. It's a waste of my audience's time. So there's no excuse. In the digital era, it's so easy to rearrange our timeline. It's not like the old film lab days where we're piecing strips of film together and then having to undo all that splicing, etc. Now, you can see when you shoot MOS, that means there's a lot of work to do with sound design in post-production. And typically I'm recording my own Foley sound, or I'm using sounds from a sound library. I already have that done for this scene, so I'm going to lay it in real quick and then we'll go over it. Cool. Okay, so here we go. I've got a bunch of sound added. And I've also named my tracks over here. So even though I have them color-coded and I try to be consistent with that, naming them just helps me quickly see, okay, what's this? Effects 1, Effects 2, Effects 3. And I can quickly see these are all mono tracks. If I added a stereo track for effects, I'd call it Effects 4, maybe S for stereo, but the 2.0 would tell me as well. And a little side note, what if you add another track and you want it to be Effects 4, but now it's down here on the bottom? How do you get that up? Well, you could right-click on it and move track up and do that till you get it in the right spot. Or a faster way would be to go up here to your index, click on tracks, and then we can simply click on that and drag it up to where it needs to be. And then you'll see the change take place here. So that just helps you keep your timeline organized. Okay, let me take this video track down to give me a little more real estate down here. And this is when that dual screen mode, which gives us more room for our timeline, is nice. But I don't want to lose our source and timeline viewers right now for the lesson, so let me just do this. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. On the wide shot, I wanted just some background ambience. Let me solo this. Okay, and then when we cut in, you see there's a cut here in the background ambience as well, and that's fine. You do want to change the perspective of your background. We're moving in closer to our character. We're changing our position out here in nature. So it's okay to do subtle changes to support that. And then all of this is going to be her footsteps in the grass. So you can solo more than one track at a time, but I'm going to unsolo that one. Solo this. Let's zoom in. Let's make this larger. Okay, so you can see that this is pretty tedious. Let me really fast up the volume on these so we can see the waveforms because they're pretty quiet. So you can see frame by frame, boom, you see that boot hit and you want to have those peaks in the right spots. And this is going to take a lot of tweaking. And even when you think you get it right, you're going to be watching it and think, that's not right, and I need to tweak it some more. But some of that you can do in the sound design stage, so you don't have to be too meticulous when you're picture editing. It's all up to you. And then something else to know when you're placing your audio. When you're editing picture, you can only do it frame by frame. So there's 24 frames in a second if we shot 24 frames. And so we can do one frame at a time edits. But the sound, if you zoom in, Resolve will let you move sound in smaller increments, which is really, really nice. So you can really perfect where your library sounds or your Foley sound hits. Next, after the footsteps, then we hit the chickens. So I just added some chicken library sound here. Let me unsolo this because I also have more chicken stuff going on there. And then we jump back into Foley footsteps with the chickens, and then we cut to a wide, and you can see down here on my ambience that's stereo, I have some barnyard ambience going on now. Let me solo that. So we still want to hear those things. She just left them, but we're still on the farm. Now, the difference in the footsteps here is that she's getting onto some dirt and gravel, and so it can't be grass anymore. So you can see here, Foley feet, footsteps, dirt. And then I have the door opening. And also, if you noticed, right here, I'm going to solo it, I have a goat. So this tells us with audio ahead of time that there's a goat in this barn. You can do so much with sound, just like this. We, in a subtle way, told the audience ahead of time before they see the goat that, hey, she's going to feed a goat. And then I have a little more chicken stuff going on here because we see a chicken when we see the goat. So I'm going to support that with this sound right here. And it just adds to the overall ambience. A little more right there. And then this is what? Oh, that was library sound of a goat eating, because my production audio must not have had that very well. So does that make sense? Now, something else we could do is add some music here. So I'm going to go back to my media pool, and I have a song right here. I like that. So I'm going to back it up, and then I'm going to place that. All right, let's just throw it in and I'll tweak it. So I'm going to grab that and bring it down to my music track. And you will notice, let me bring up my mixer, and it's on meters. Let me change that to mixer. And I'm going to solo the music track. And you'll notice, so you can see it's peaking big time. Music always comes in hot. So I'm just going to go to A6 right here and just lower that down, the whole entire track. Okay, that's better. Now let's work on placement. I want that piano to happen right here. So let me move it a little bit. Then I'm going to fade it out. So I'll use my blade tool, cut that. I'm going to lift that out of there, do a long fade on this. Let's unsolo it. All right. So it fades out too quickly, but you can see what music does to the emotions of that scene. It's amazing. So I would tweak this more. In fact, I even found myself wanting to hear the music sooner, but you get it. So this music editing is very, very important. Where you position your music, where you bring it in, how loud it is, it's all huge. And you're going to do a lot of that in picture editing, but then you'll do the final touches in sound design later on. So let's watch this from start to finish and see what it's like. I'm just going to extend this. It's not going to be right, but I don't want to just drop the music out. I'm going to do a long fade. And all right, Command F for full screen. Let's just see how it plays.
Good boy. Good boy.
Okay, two things I want to mention really fast. Number one, when you lay in your music, you're probably going to end up adjusting other levels. For example, when I put this music in, I didn't show you, but I had to go through and adjust footsteps, even the goat in the background, stuff like that, because you suddenly couldn't hear those items anymore. And we'll talk about this stuff more in the sound design course, but just keep that in mind. Even when you're picture editing, you might want to do some tweaks there. And then number two, your dialogue needs to be peaking at around -10 or -12 on the meter, and you need to balance your dialogue in that range starting out here. Again, another post-sound topic for that course, but let me zoom in on the timeline. And I'm going to solo her dialogue and check it on the meter. And I'm looking at A1. I'm not looking at bus, which is the whole mix. So let me play it.
Good boy.
Okay, so we can see it's hitting a little hot, so I need to lower the fader on A1 to fix that. Now you might be thinking, that's going to throw all the other sounds we just did off. And you're right. So in this scenario, I'd need to fix this by adjusting bus 1, which is the overall mix. Again, we'll talk about this more later, but just know if I was doing this from the beginning and this was my actual movie, I would first get my dialogue adjusted before I lay in any other sounds, because I'm going to have to go through and retweak all those if I wait and do my dialogue later. And most likely your production sound is going to come in at different levels, so some of the adjustments you're going to do clip by clip. you can't just do it all with a fader because it's all different levels anyway. So you're going to highlight a clip, go to your inspector, and do adjustments there. Now I want to show you some other general editing tips, but hopefully this has been helpful. Building your soundscape is so big. Now, let me say this. Focus on your picture edits first. I will spend a lot of time picture editing before I ever touch sound, even on the edit page, because the more work you do with your sound design, the more you kind of then don't want to change your scene because so much work was done. And so don't do that to yourself. Get your picture edit where it needs to be, really solid, and then you can start adding some sound in, and that'll put you in a better spot because you'll be more free to be creative with your picture edits. Now, a few other things I want to go over. If you want to see your entire timeline, let's say you're really zoomed in, you can hit Shift-Z, and it doesn't make sense with this one scene because it's so short, but when you're working on a longer story, a longer film, Shift-Z is nice to see everything. It's kind of like hitting this. So a couple notes on match frame. If I put my playhead over a clip and hit F, it's going to show me that clip. But if I want to find the bin that clip is in, I hit Option F, and then it locates the clip in the bin, which is really nice because when you're working on a whole film and you're in the timeline somewhere and you're like, where's this bin? Option F. Now, something we haven't talked about is, let's say you had 2 different takes stacked together because you weren't sure which one you wanted to use or whatever. If the playhead is over this one, actually let me put it over here above the chickens. So if the playhead is over this and I do F, it's going to show me that clip. But if I then double click on the clip below it, then it will show me that one. And then Option F works on this one down here. And while we've got 2 clips stacked like this, let's say this, let me make this larger. Let's say I had multiple takes of her approaching the barn in the wide and I wasn't sure which one I liked. So I've got them both here. If I hit D on the keyboard, it disables one, all right? By default, it's going to show the top one over this one. But if I hit D, now I'm going to see this clip. And if I hit D again, it re-enables that one. So that's nice to do. If you can't make a decision, but you don't want to forget the decision, just leave one here and hit D if you need to, and then you can come back to it later. Another little tip, if you want a secondary bin open, I can right-click on the bin up here on the left and choose Open as New Window. That's going to open that bin in a separate window that I can drag around, put on my other display, etc. So that's a nice little feature. Another tip, let's say I hit play, and then I go to Inspector and I say I want to change something with my video. Well, it's not going to change the clip that my playhead is on. It's going to change the one that's still highlighted over here. And when you're working with titles, that's when that normally gets me. My playhead will be over a title and I'll go change it and then it changes this title over here. So if you want to disable that, go to Timeline and click Selection Follows Playhead. And now when we play, it highlights the clips as the playhead is over them. Okay? So that was the last tip I wanted to share in this lesson. I'll see you in the next lesson soon. We've got a little more to cover in post-production too before we get into the storytelling phase of editing. We got to cover codecs, proxy files, some cool stuff like that that's going to help you out a lot in understanding how this stuff works. So I'll see you in that next lesson soon. Hey, and listen, if you like this training and you're an aspiring filmmaker, check out my online film school, writedirect.co. Write and Direct. The goal of my school is to help you sidestep the minefields that claim the dreams of so many other filmmakers. What do I mean by that? Well, look at me. I did the traditional thing. I went to Los Angeles, went to film school, and yeah, I learned a lot, but I spent a lot of money. And if you want to direct movies, when you graduate from film school, there's kind of only one way forward. And what is that? To begin directing movies, but it's on your dime. Your education will not land you a job as a director. So if you spend all your money on your education, you can see you're in a tough spot. Write and Direct teaches you how to make a movie from beginning to end. We begin in development with story, and we go in granular steps all the way through post-production. You learn how to do it all so that you're empowered to pursue your dreams. WriteDirect.co. I hope to see you there. And if not there, I'll see you here on the channel very soon.